Welcome to I'm Going In, the newest and hottest podcast sharing incredible stories of strength, resilience, and love. This podcast is about that moment when you face trauma or been knocked down and you decide, I'm going in. Whether it's to help yourself stand back up, to strengthen your faith, or to support others, this is where inspiration begins. Like and subscribe to my social channels and get ready to be uplifted as I introduce our next incredible guest on I'm Going In. Hey everybody, welcome back to I'm Going In. I'm going in today with a special guest that was introduced to me through a friend of mine named Ben when I spoke at the Twins Fantasy Camp in Fort Myers, Florida. And his name is Chris Ruden. And Chris is a type 1 diabetic world record amputee powerlifter, which is absolutely incredible. He's a motivational keynote speaker, was a season 1 contestant on the Titan Games with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And obviously, I mean, you take a look at him, he's a model for a ton of elite brands, but he's an author of The Upper Hand. He's co-founder and CMO of NRG Foods. And he's just been featured in a ton of really cool media outlets, Men's Health, Netflix, Washington Post, and other prominent media outlets. And he's learned to turn his obstacles into opportunities now using his badass bionic arm. Welcome, Chris, to I'm Going In.
I appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah, so really cool story. There I am, I'm speaking and telling my story to a bunch of my old former heroes that I always called my idols. Played with my dad. My dad was with the Minnesota Twins during the 1987 World Series. And so there were guys like Tom Bernansky and Tim Laudner and all these guys at this Twins fantasy camp where I got a chance to do a keynote speak and tell my story of adversity and strength going through what I went through in the Las Vegas mass shooting in 2017. And after the speech was over and we had a really cool Q&A session, and people were, the first time it had ever happened to me during a keynote where people were actually talking about mental health. And it was a very open conversation, but the coolest part about it is that the crowd was former pro players, very tough people, baseball operational staff, prominent business owners, people that you wouldn't really think that would dive into mental health questions. And it was so vulnerable and raw. It was, I mean, I'm telling you, man, it was awesome. It still gives me goosebumps thinking about how amazing the whole conversation went after the speech, right? And we talked right before this about our story being a vessel. You brought that up, but it's the aftermath. And so your friend, Ben, which is going to be on our podcast here coming up pretty soon, we got a chance to speak the next day in the locker room in more of a just intimate setting. And he's got an incredible story, what he's doing for the fight with diabetes. So I can't wait to share his. But you have an incredible story. And man, just the obstacles that you have overcome, I'd really love to dive into, just kind of take us through the childhood part of you growing up with your, do we call it a disability? Because
Disability,
really,
yeah. Disability is fair. Yep.
Disability, and then how you've been able to kind of the strength within go in for yourself. That's the whole purpose of this show, right? Is talking about that defining moment in your life when you realized, I'm not going to let this thing beat me. I'm going to stand up for myself. I'm going in for myself. I'm going in for my faith. I'm going in for others. I'm going to educate others because I want to be that beacon of light. And that's what you're doing right now. So at what point when you were growing up did you realize you had a disability?
Man, it's crazy. As you read like my intro, it sounds so cool on paper, It sounds really cool when you look back, but it was definitely not always like that. Like I don't have my prosthetic arm on me right now, but born with 2 fingers on my left hand and a shorter left arm. I also have type 1 diabetes like Ben. Um, but for 17 years, I hid my disability. My entire life, I felt broken. I felt like a monster. When you look at synonyms for disability, like weak or broken or useless or helpless, and it's like, imagine accepting a label for a condition you never asked for in the first place. And whether that's a condition like mine or a situation or circumstance that most people face in their life, they usually don't ask for it, similar to the situation you were put in. the question is like, what are you going to do with that? And motivational hustle culture bro status today tells us hustle, kill, dominate, motivate. Man, that's not always how it goes. For
Yeah.
me, my version of hustling and killing was shoving my hand in my pocket and
Mm.
keeping in my hand in my pocket for 17 years.
Mm.
17 years, like what do you do when even going outside is the hardest thing you could possibly do in your life? How do you adjust that,
I
My entire life I felt like as long as I hid, I would be accepted. And I lived that way for almost 20 years, up until 5 years ago.
5 years ago. Wow. Chris, I've had the opportunity to meet some pretty incredible people through our stories of trauma, right? Um, Chief Bernie Meehan in Fairfield County, Connecticut. We talked about it, and he said, we're like brothers from another mother, put together with trauma, and our stories of relatability and what we've gone through, whether it's a shooting or being an amputee or whatever that is, and having a disability, it's trauma. And Lori Zapula in Florida was a woman that jumped into a pool at 17 and broke her neck. She became paralyzed. And one of the most capturing things that I got out of her story that really broke my heart was when she started talking about how people would look down on her, right? And that moment that like was just so defeating to her soul, where you could just feel it like, God, I just wish I was there to tell those people to stop looking, right? How did you overcome that part of it? I mean, obviously you're trying to hide things. People are going to see though, and sometimes people are just rude. They're curious, and maybe out of that curiosity, there's some staring and things like that. At some point, though, did you ever lash out? How did you kind of find that inner strength for yourself to take your hand out of your pocket and realize I'm okay with this? And you know what? I think everybody else is going to be okay with this too.
I think it's hard for most people to understand what it means to hide something for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
So when I can better explain that through story. When I was 14, I almost got arrested by, I thought, the Secret Service in Washington, D.C. Going into the Washington, D.C. monument, they told me to take my hand out of my pocket, and I refused.
Wow.
Over and over and over, I refused, and they took me to the back room. I'm like, I'm going to Guantanamo Bay. It's done. I'm, getting shipped off.
Wow.
And it's just mall security cops, but
Paul Blart.
yeah, exactly. Paul Blart on a Segway type stuff. Um, I pull my hand out and I'm sure they were expecting some sort of like AK-47 or something, but it was just a disfigured hand on a broken kid.
Wow.
And that was one of the hardest moments because I was forced to show what I was hiding. And my mom was a nurse and she always asked, like, how was your day? And I would always lie to her and I was like, it's great, mom. I was embarrassed that my mom had a kid that looked like me. I
Wow.
was embarrassed, and there was one day specifically that I tell across the world to help people understand. In middle school, there was this girl named Crystal. She was 14. It was my first ever potential girlfriend. I'm like, oh my God, she's the hottest girl in school.
Mm.
There was only like three girls in my class, but I finally worked up the courage as a 14-year-old boy. We don't even know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Um, and I went up to go like ask her out. And all my friends started laughing. So I turned around. I'm like, guys, stop. You're gonna mess this up. I turn around and she's making fun of my hand with the stapler, calling me Claw Boy. And she humiliated me in front of the entire class. That was the first time I shoved my hand in my pocket. And I kept it there until I was 27.
Unbelievable.
27 years old. I remember going home and my mom would always ask me, how was your day? And I would lie to her. And that day I was like, Mom, why did you do this to me? Why did you make me like this? You made me a monster. You're a nurse and you help everyone else, but you couldn't even help your own son.
Mm.
You shouldn't even have had me.
Wow.
And seeing my mom break down and cry and like just apologize, that was like one of those moments that you talk about, those like power of moments and when things start to change. I
Yeah.
don't believe in the Disneyfication of one magical moment. I believe in the compound effect of moments that lead up to decisions that make changes, you know? So
Mhm.
that moment had an impact on me to be like, man, maybe I can't change the way I look or my circumstance, but maybe I can change something else, what I do about it. You know, and I started getting more curious than definitive with who I was and what I could be. It took me a long time after that to make those steps. So that moment didn't magically fix everything. I still spent years hiding, but I spent years trying different things. I did lash out. I got with the wrong crowd. I went to substances. I tried to do everything but the work of accepting myself.
Wow. I can't even imagine, being a father and you look at your kids in probably just a different light, right? And you don't see maybe the faults that other people might see in them because of the love and that you
Yeah.
have. And all you want as a parent, for the most part, at least I hope, is that you can be there. You can be that security force. You can be that mental health approach and resource to them and uplift them all the time because all you want is a smile on their face, right? That must have been so hard on your parents too at that time. Do you ever talk to them about your journey and have they ever kind of expressed what their kind of thought process was trying to protect you in ways because you had a disability? I'm just curious as to their point of view as well.
I'll be super honest. I still protect them.
Yeah.
I still protect them from everything I went through. And it's funny because like seeing my mom follow me on social media, I have 150,000 followers across a few different platforms and seeing that my mom is following me and I'll post some stuff that's like pretty hard hitting. She's like, "Oh my God, I didn't know that."
Wow. Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I can tell she kind of doesn't want to know, but she wants to know.
Mhm.
Because in her mind, she did everything she could, and that's fantastic. That's all I could have ever asked for. We grew up super poor, like my parents did what they needed to do.
Yeah.
Um, of course, could anyone do anything better? We could always optimize our past. Hindsight 2020.
Right.
But I truly believe they did what they could and they tried their best, but they didn't know what it's like to have a lived experience. And I think it's unfair on this side of the world now where I'm at. I think it's unfair of us to expect other people to understand what they didn't go through and expect from other people to mirror our perspectives, which are custom to us. There's no universal
Mm.
fix to an individual problem, yet a lot of times we put judgment on people saying, you just don't understand. Well, of course. And you don't understand them. Just as
Right.
I don't understand you fully, you don't understand me fully. Even if we had the same day. My buddy Ben, we both have type 1 diabetes. We could both eat the same exact food and take the same exact medication, but his body is going to metabolize it and process it differently
That's
because
right.
we don't live in a vacuum. So instead of seeking to be fully understood, just seek to be heard. And for so long, I wouldn't hear myself out, let alone anyone else.
Yeah. And you typically don't, right?
No,
I
you
mean,
resist it.
especially
You resist it.
you resist it. It's scary. Um, I think so. I want to touch on relatability a little bit. Uh, at some point, probably in your journey, trying to discover yourself, reach out to try different things, try to take your hand out of your pocket, whatever that may be. Was there somebody in your life that you saw that aspired you to maybe try different things and all of a sudden those things started working where you could learn more about who you are and who you want to become?
For me, this is the tough question that I get sometimes. I never had someone to look up to,
Mm,
but I had tons of people to look down to. Um, with lifting, I saw magazines of guys with like cool bodies, and I'm like, man, that's so cool. Part of me is just petty and stubborn, and I'm just like, I want to do this. And if I'm told
yeah,
I can't, I'm like, screw you, watch me. I'll
yeah,
find a way. It was more out of pettiness, to be honest, but the pettiness really helped me. So when people say things like they demonize certain feelings, feelings are not to be demonized. The reactions from feelings are within your control. Not easy, yes, easier said than done, of course, but better done than said.
right.
Better done than said. So I was like, how can I harness these so-called negative feelings and make use of them? That pettiness drove me to find a way. Instead of saying, I can't do this, I said, how could I do this?
That's right.
I got more curious, and then I fell in love with like bodybuilding, and then people started to follow my story because I was posting it on social media, and I started powerlifting. All this stuff started happening, and every roadblock I hit, which you know you're going to hit multiple roadblocks, every roadblock I hit, it was tempting to be like, this is where it stops, this is where it ends. And then I would ask that pessimistic positivity doubt, but is it? And I would find a way. I eventually started speaking, by chance. It
Mm.
was always a dream job.
Yeah.
There, that question where it's like, what's your dream job? And I'm like, speaker. I didn't even know what that
Yeah.
meant. I saw Tony
Yeah.
Robbins once and I was like, oh, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Um, from there, I remember I started talking to some kids and I saw kids light up, whether they were diabetic or they had disability. I saw
Yes.
their I saw that aha moment in their head where
Mhm.
they're like they saw representation and it mattered. They saw potential and it mattered. They saw me not as broken. Like for some of the first times in my life, I saw people look at me with awe and inspiration instead of disgust or intrigue as if I was some sort of creature.
Yeah.
Kids have been, it sounds so weird because I don't really want kids myself for my personal opinion, but kids across the country have been the reason I've motivated myself. So that's
Yeah.
been my motivator.
That's such an inspiring story. You talk to a lot of different people that experience, whether it's cancer survivors, uh, vets coming back with unfortunate injuries that are life changing, and myself going through traumatic events and trying to learn how to live in your world again, being a dad, going to work, having that trauma in the back of your skull, bringing it back out, going to therapy, and doing all these different things that you need to be able to do. Everybody has those difficulties in their life, and you look up to someone like yourself that is an inspiration. And whether you want to be called it or not, you are. You're inspiring those people that feel like they can't do something in their lives. And now all of a sudden they go, have you seen what this guy's doing? Have you seen what Chris is doing? He's got one arm basically, and he's powerlifting and he's lifting these weights and he's doing these positive things to encourage others to stand up for themselves and to go in for themselves, right? To be a better person, to not look down on others, which is a huge lesson here, right? Because we never know what that person is experiencing, which is, I'm a firm believer in relatability and sharing your story. Because, like you said, it it's the story itself that opens up the opportunity for somebody else to realize, man, that's me. I feel the same way. And then it's the opportunity for them to ask questions, whether it's internal or asking you personally, how did you overcome this? That's the light of it, right? That's the shiny kind of yellow goldish road that we all want to try to get on at some point and understand how it was that you defied the odds. Because if you can do it, you're human. I can poke at you, I can touch you, I can see you. I can do it too. And it's just incredible that you're spreading that message all the way across really the world. Talk about this experience with the Titan Games with Dwayne The Rock Johnson, The Rock. I mean, everybody knows who he is, but how did that come about?
Man. So I had started powerlifting. I wanted to bodybuild first, but
Okay.
bodybuilding takes a long time, especially when you're a 140-pound kid coming out of high school. I I normalized my disability in the wrong way. I hid it and I built an identity around hiding, so much
Mm.
so that it wasn't questioned. People just come to know me as the kid with the hand in pocket or the kid who wore a glove to cover his hand. Now I used that. Sometimes we hide in plain sight. I
Wow.
used that as a way to play drums, and I was on drumline for 4 years. So I shoved
Holy
a
cow.
drumstick through the finger hole of the glove. I did everything to show everyone else that I was just as good as you, but I didn't believe it myself. it was literally like cocaine, where I needed a dopamine hit to remind myself that I was good enough because I just didn't believe it. I had a crack in my reservoir of self-esteem that I constantly needed to chase. Now, it was cool because I did a lot of cool stuff. I
Yeah.
was doing breakdancing, I was doing all kinds of crazy stuff, like everything out of the ordinary. Um, but powerlifting was one of those things that was really hard. To be able to compete against able-bodied competitors and be competitive, I don't want a participation trophy. I got to the point where I won my first powerlifting meet, got all the way to the point where I deadlifted 675 pounds, below
Well,
200 pounds, as a person with one hand and a broken pancreas against able-bodied lifters. That process, I finally made a decision to stop hiding my hand. And I kind of did that. I kind of screwed myself over in a
mm,
really good way. I told myself if I ever got a prosthetic arm, I would stop hiding my hand.
mm,
Partly because in the United States, it's extremely difficult to get a prosthetic arm. My
yeah.
prosthetic arm, which I'm sure you can post a picture of, um, is over $100,000.
Wow.
It's insane. And I never expected to get approved of it, so I never had to stop hiding my hand. It's one of those like
Yeah.
conditional situations that we set up for ourselves. If I get here, then I'll be happy. We never get there, so we're never happy. Well, I got approved for the arm, and I was like, shit, damn it. What do I do? At the time, I was with a girl for 4 years. I decided to make a video on YouTube taking my glove off.
Wow.
That was the first time that girlfriend of 4 years saw my hand.
Oh my gosh. Really?
I posted the video. She edited it, and that was the first time she saw my hand. That's how much, when I'm talking about I hid my hand, this is not a joke. My
It's
entire
incredible.
life revolved around this. I would not go to school if I didn't have my glove. Like it was
Wow.
that bad. I did that for me. It was one of those coming out moments where you just acknowledge the trauma and stuff you've been dealing with, vulnerable and authentic, and you're just like, this is me. I woke up to millions of views on that YouTube video, and I was like, shit, that is not what I expected. Viral, like 7 million views. It went insane. Ended up like weeks later getting a call from The Rock inviting me to try out for this TV show. And I'm like, this is fake.
Yeah.
This has to be fake. It was like 9 p.m. and they're like, do you want to do an audition? I'm like, I'm not taking my shirt off. This is weird. I don't know if this is legit,
Yeah.
And I did it and I was like, cool, whatever. That was a cool experience. I get a call back and they're like, hey, we want to have you come try out. So they flew me to LA with 200 other people to try out. 12-day combine, did everything from fitness to mental health check to speaking and everything you could think. And these were world-class athletes. I did that and I was like, there's no way. I'm a power lifter. I lift heavy things one time and I go home.
Mhm.
I got the call. They chose 30 people, 15 guys. I made the cut.
Wow.
On that, they chose 3 guys to be on the cover of all the billboards, the buses, everything. I made the cut. I ended up losing my episode, but I got to spend time with The Rock. And when I lost, I was the only one who got to do an interview after I lost, and I got to share my message. And that message went viral. The Rock reposted that moment. He came down from his platform and hugged me like it was nuts. And from that moment, I was like, I have a job to do. It's my job to help people see their world without limits by broadcasting my world without limits. I have to be that lighthouse, as you said, or I have to be that light that guides people more to the shore than the rocks. And
That's
the
right.
only way you can do that is when you decide or realize you've been a role model your entire life. It's just time to actually optimize that role.
That's absolutely incredible. I mean, I'm just listening to your story and going through things that you must have gone through, and my heart just absolutely pours out to you as a individual, as a young boy growing up and hiding this disability, and then becoming a man, and then the 4 year journey of dating a loved one, and then unveiling your true identity, right? Of who you really are, and you're breaking down those barriers. And I always kind of refer to it. I'm very into my faith, and it really happened to me more when I experienced what I went through in Las Vegas, And I came back and I knew I wasn't alone. And it's, um, at that point, when I go into church, I take off my armor. I'm always on the defensive, right? I'm always identifying threat opportunities. It's just part of who I am now. I'm always in basically fight mode in terms of protecting those around me. But when I get into a comfort place, I'm able to strip down that armor. And what's one thing I've really noticed about doing this podcast and even just going out and speaking is people want to see the raw form of who you are, right? They don't want the guarded side because that's not how we learn as a society, as an individual. We all have lessons that we can teach. I talk about checking your tough box off. We've all experienced some form of traumatic trauma. We've all been in a plane crash, per se, of our own emotions or whatever something has happened in the life where we've gotten out of that. We've checked our tough box. And now, why can't we be tough and share our emotions? And someone like you that has literally put in the work, right? You step forward, you went in for yourself. You found powerlifting as a vessel to give you comfort, to give you confidence, and this constant grind of you trying to always be better than what you needed to be at that time. You could have just been yourself and probably been totally loved by so many that you actually want to be around, right? That give you comfort and give you guidance in your life. But now you're on this grand stage and you took advantage of it. And I mean, you defied everything. You took advantage of it not for you, but you did it for every other person that suffers with a disability in their life that is now looking at you. And I called it that beacon of light, that light that's now they're looking and saying, hey, Chris did this. And I hide my shame. I hide my disability. I hide my fault. I hide my trauma. I hide everything that I've ever really that beats me up inside, that puts those headaches into my skull at night. But you didn't. Not now. You're out. I think it's absolutely remarkable. It's inspirational. I'm so honored to just sit here and talk to you, man. I could literally just
I
talk to you all day
appreciate it, man.
long.
I really appreciate it. It's one of those things like I'm I'm finishing up my manuscript for my second book, which is all about like change and getting
Yeah.
unstuck. But one of the things I wrote yesterday that's just been like on my mind and it's relevant now. I'm making rules for like radical honesty and radical acceptance of where you're at, you know? And a lot of people say I should be farther along in life. I shouldn't be this emotional. I shouldn't feel this way. I should have been successful by now. And like that's just it's based in guilt and shame. And if anything, the desire for a positive experience is a negative experience because you're desiring what you don't have instead of doing what you can, you know? So what I wrote was
Huge.
rejecting reality doesn't change it. It just turns pain into suffering. Pain is a normal part of the process. That discomfort, that unfamiliarity, that desire to maintain familiarity is a security feature of us as humans. It's a security feature to maintain homeostasis or a level of normality. But when you allow your brain to lie to you and say all unfamiliarity is bad, innovation ceases to exist in your personal life, your professional life, in every aspect. So for me, I was rejecting the reality of I was completely normal having a disability. Disability is normal.
Mm,
25% of the world has some sort of disability. Why did I tell myself that disability is not normal? Why do you tell yourself that breakups are not normal, that pandemics are not normal, that ups and downs and all of these things, that all of these things are normal? So when we say things like, I wish things would go back to normal or I wish things were better,
mm,
it's not that they're better or worse, they just are.
right.
And the question is, how can we tell better stories to have better outcomes? Whether that's internally, externally, or whatever you can personally influence. For me, I didn't optimally influence my reality. I just kind of let it exist and it festered in a negative manner that kind of affected me. I can't change it. Of course, we could, should, would, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, today and every day, I choose to do what I can with what I have to make it a little bit better, or honestly, make it suck a little bit less. That's kind of my motto.
Yeah, I I pray every morning that just this world has more love in it, and that I can continue to walk tall and be vulnerable and approachable and raw. That's all I want. I want to be able to bring peace not only to those around me, but to me as well, right? Because you have to have that inner peace. You have to, like you mentioned, the demons that sometimes live inside your skull or inside your body and letting those out. It You're the one that's letting those in. You're the one that has the opportunity to push those away and to live a life that is truly going to make you happy, right? You have to be able to accept in today's society that there's going to be things that are going to be bad. There's going to be people that you may not agree with in your life. There's going to be people that are going to look down on you because you have a disability or that you're just not smart enough, or maybe you went through something and they don't know how to react to that. So they're going to push themselves away from you. And you're going to wonder, is it because I went through this? Is it because I look this way? Is it because I'm not looking like him or like her? What is it that's wrong with me? Right. And that's the biggest question I think you could probably ask 100% of people, and 98 or 99% of the people in our whole world is going to say, yes, I doubt my own esteem. I doubt my own looks. I doubt my own ability to get a job done. But you're defying that. And I think it's people like you, and I'd like to throw myself in that bucket to be able to stand up and to tell our stories, right? Because stories are so impactful, and to be able to help somebody learn just a little bit more. And somebody told me a long time ago, when you're doing a podcast, unless you've got a group of people that are all sitting around in a room watching the show, you're really talking to one person.
Always. Even when I speak on
One,
stages, I'm talking to one person. A crowd of
yes,
5,000, I'm speaking to one person. I create messages for one singular person because that's how people understand it. It makes it more personal and authentic. You don't speak at people, you speak to someone. Even if you're speaking to a group of three people, you're speaking to someone. And that's why your eyes, your gaze changes. You have to speak to that person because otherwise you're just preaching, and maybe that preaching doesn't come across as authentic.
that's such a great. I mean, you're also a coach, a
Speaker
life
coach.
coach.
Yep. Speaker
Yep.
coach. So I actually coach speaking and helping people not only tell more effective stories, but learn the business side of speaking, which really helped me go from personal growth to like professional growth.
Mm,
I've got, went from being that kid who grew up in a family who doesn't know money to earning the wealth and earning the lifestyle that I never thought was possible through being authentic, but it's something you said, you're talking about, being an example, being a role model. True authenticity means you cannot give what you're not living. You can't give what you don't live. If you are not living that thing, if you're not living that moment that you're trying to help other people with, you won't be able to truly give it.
that's right.
To be a role model, to be a mentor means to take care of your own life first. There's a reason why on planes you have to put your oxygen mask on first,
Mm,
because you
that's
have to be able to help other people around you. You cannot give what you don't have. So taking care of yourself is not a selfish thing. If anything, I argue you have to be selfish to be selfless. That's
that's
just
right.
what it is.
You touch on that, and I want to dive into a little bit of a darker space. Um, and then I want to hear your story of uplift in any type of trauma, any type of bad situation, anything that happens in someone's life where they've been completely knocked down, whether it's a combat vet that's just coming out of a war scene, or it's yourself that is just hammered down with negativity and self doubt and everything else. The trauma part of it brings a moment of silence. And I talk about this a lot. The moment of silence where everything is dark and there's this fear and this scared feeling of what do I do now? How do I get out of where I'm at? I'm tired of being in this place, right? And it's our job as people that have gone through those moments of silence to try to recognize things that our friends or our family members are going through to try to disrupt that silence, right? Unfortunately, a lot of people can't. And that's why our suicide rates are so high, right? They can't get out of that own silent moment of themselves, and they don't know how to get out of that. At what point in your life did you have that moment of silence? And how you mentioned powerlifting and getting into lifting, but explain that process of when you took yourself from the dark and put yourself in the light.
So I feel like you have to define this by acute and chronic darkness.
Mm,
Acute darkness would be spiraling out of control, being on the edge. And I've been on the edge with substances, with things ready to just not be here anymore. Call it fate, call it whatever you want to. A specific time, a friend came over and he doesn't even know what he stopped from happening, you know?
wow. Yeah.
Um, it's funny because in that moment, he had brought over a handle of Captain Morgan. And I was like, this is perfect. Like, this is it, you know? And we broke the handle of Captain Morgan in my dad's house. So we had to clean it. But that disruption of the pattern
Mm,
probably saved everything. So what you're talking about is like, how do
wow.
you disrupt the equilibrium of darkness? How do you disrupt that homeostasis you've found in stuckness? You know, and that's actually what my new book is about that comes out later this year. I have a process for that. And it's similar to any change management process, but it's multifaceted. So many people are like, how do I get out of the darkness? Like, oh, go to therapy. Oh, journal. Oh, go to the gym. It's all one finger pointing thing. And that it's kind of like typing for people who have both hands. You should probably use all your fingers instead of just one, you know? But people tend to do these one-off things. And they're like, that didn't work. They'll say things like, I tried everything. I used to do fitness training. That was my degree, exercise science. And I remember people would say, I tried everything. I'm like, oh, tell me what you did. They tried three things. And on a scale of 1 to 10, they put 6 out of 10 effort in those three things. And
Yeah.
I was like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I just Googled best diet for weight loss and there's 295 million results. You did all of those? No. Okay. So language plays a huge role in getting unstuck or out of those dark moments. When you say things like I'm lazy, I'm shit, I suck, I am this, what you truly mean, you're speaking with a lie because what you truly mean is in the past I have been lazy. That's completely true. You used
Yeah.
to be this way, but it's not who you have to be right now. But by choosing to say I am this, you are becoming a prisoner of your past habits, which stops your future self from ever getting out of that dark place. Language plays a huge role. Why? We've been telling stories for eons. Stories are language. They take a subjective issue and you can turn it positive or negative. I could tell you my story in a sob story or in an inspirational story.
Right.
Same features, same characters, same plot, different messaging.
Yeah.
So you have to rewire those messagings and say, okay, not I can't do anything. I'm never going to get better. That's a commitment to a past belief. Say, how could I possibly make this better? Or how am I making this worse? Sometimes
Right.
process of elimination works. My process is going from subconscious to conscious. You have to make feelings real by acknowledging them, maybe writing them down, maybe it's video, whatever your medium is. Until you make those thoughts real, you can't fix what you're not willing to face. From
Yeah. Point.
subconscious to conscious, that's the process. You have to make it real. But then you have to go from conscious to communicated. Accountability creates a lot more success when it comes to goal setting. There was a statistic that said 10% of people who have a goal accomplish it, but 95% of people who have an accountability partner and commit to meeting up accomplish that goal. That's a massive increase in success when it comes
Yeah.
to accomplishing something that you have an accountability partner for. So from subconscious to conscious, then conscious to communicated, you're keeping yourself accountable and you have an accountability partner. From accountability, you go to broadcasted. You live as the role model that you needed. You operate in a way that what would my best self do? Would my best self think this way, act this way? Would my best self allow himself to spiral? If you operate with that filter, you start making better decisions. And better decisions are a skill that need to be practiced and improved over time. You can't run a marathon right now. You can't lose 100 pounds right now, but you can take a step. All marathon runners take one step, all of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my process. It's a multifaceted process from taking honest ownership of the real issue, communicating it for accountability, and living it by broadcasting the life that you need to live to inspire others, which also inspires yourself.
It's so uplifting too, right? When you have that aha moment where you've shared something that has clicked with that other person, and then it uplifts them, and you walk away now feeling taller about yourself because,
Absolutely.
yeah, you've accomplished that, right? The other part, you talked about accountability partner. I think that's so key in learning how to help others, right? And being a servant to others, through our own adversities and our own trials of tribulation and defeat, right? Stories of defeat at times can uplift and become stories of success. And listening to you talk this whole time about your own defeats and how those stories of defeat have become successful for you and where you're at, and standing as tall as what you can in the face of adversity. It's awesome. I think for me, when I was knocked down and I had my moment of silence, it was disrupted by an individual that had a relatable story. As a combat vet, and he shared with me some things that allowed me to process what was going to happen to me in the next 72 hours of my life. And from that moment, I had others that came out that had relatable stories, and they became my accountability partners and making sure I was okay and that I was taking the next steps to make sure that I was doing things to lift myself up, right? Never to, hey, one day you're going to end up having a podcast, and one day you're going to go out and speak in front of hundreds or thousands of people, and you're going to share your story and it's going to be uplifting. Never to that point. It was just about me taking care of me, the genuine love and friendship that came in from them to make sure that I was okay. We forget that a lot in our lives. And it's not to say that we have the ability to go out to every street corner or go to church or go to our work and get down and say, hey, what do you have going on? Let's fix things, right? It has to be organic and raw. But if you put yourself out there and in that right moment, you never know who you're going to end up influencing,
I
right?
think there's a big difference, and I talk about this towards the end of my book. There's a big difference between living by example as a role model and actually becoming an intentional mentor.
Mm,
You can't unsolicited mentor other people. Like that's really weird. If you start telling them this is what you need to do, like, that's not going
right,
to work. You
right.
push, they're going to push back. You live as if your daughter's watching. You live as if the person you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago is watching.
Mm,
Be who you needed most at your lowest every day, every moment. When you mess up, you will. People need to operate with two components. There's a dichotomy between self-love and compassion and ownership. Too much self-love without ownership validates bad decisions. Too much ownership without self-love creates this cold, hard shell where you feel invalidated and emotionally just numb. You need a combination of both. And I'm sure you know people that are on one side or the other. People who have just almost coddled themselves into talking about the problems but never doing anything about it. And then people who refuse to accept the problems and they're just go, 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 go. There is a space in between. You need to live between those lines. And you know when your balance is off if you're not living between those lines.
that's right. Wow. Chris, man, you have thrown it down today.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you giving the opportunity for people to hear this stuff because
Yeah,
by asking these kind of questions, we unlock different philosophies from different people that might
right.
resonate. A lot of the messages are the same: how to get unstuck, how to change, how to overcome adversity. But the perspectives and the stories give people an invitation to a vessel that they've been waiting for. So by asking these questions to people like me and any other guests you're going to have, you are allowing people to choose for themselves to get out of that darkness. That's what it takes. You can't push people to get out of darkness. You can only invite them, and when they see the vessel that works for them, they'll hop on.
Oh, and it's like you brought up earlier, if you and Ben both having type 1 diabetes eat the same thing, his body might react differently
Completely
than
different.
yours. Everybody's darkness is different, right?
Everybody. And the way we interpret it and
That's
react to
right.
it is different. So, how can we create tools for people to use their way? When I use a hammer and a nail, I have to do it differently because of my hand. I can still do it, I just do it differently.
Yeah.
Give people tools that can be used the way they need to. Obviously, track performance and progress, but give people tools. Teach them how to use them, and they'll learn how to use them best for themselves.
One last story before we learn more about where we can obviously get find you and whatnot. I had the opportunity to be around Jim Abbott, which was a left-handed
Yep.
pitcher with the Angels and one arm, and an incredible man, number one. Just a really genuine, down-to-earth, super nice guy like yourself. And he had a disability, right? But he's in the big leagues. And he shared a locker next to my dad. So I used to sit there and watch him go through his pregame routine and how he'd flip his glove and be able to field a ground ball. And it was magical, right? I mean, just the raw art and the form of it and how he would flip it off and throw. But then I went and played golf with him. And I was the whole time going to this golf course. I was with my dad and I'm like, how is he going to swing? Like, well, all these questions, like, there's no way he could play golf. And
Did
he
he
gets up with the
one-handed backswing?
one-handed, and he puts the ball down the middle, better drive than probably any of us had. And at that point, it was over. Like, he's not disabled anymore. Like, this guy can do whatever I can do and better, right? um, it, it was just an inspirational moment for me. And I think for those that don't have a physical disability, when you see people like yourself out on the grand stage and showing that, hey, I can overcome these obstacles, it's an inspiring light for all of those that have a disability to strive for where you're at. And it's attainable, right? You're not unreachable. You're attainable. Your goals are attainable for them. And you've been hitting it all through this whole podcast. I know through the podcast, I'm going to have people are seeing your brand, they're seeing your website link and all these things. But tell us a little bit more about this book that you've got launched coming up. Anything else you have coming up that we can, get ready to see? How do people get a hold of you? And yeah, again, thank you for being on the show. It's
Of
awesome.
course, man. So I have a current book out and it's on Amazon. It's called The Upper Hand and it's about self-communication. That one really focuses on like everyone says communication is key, but that's step two. Self-communication is key. You can't expect from others what you're not willing to give yourself. From that, I've been talking a lot about change and getting unstuck. And my next book comes out in September, published with Wiley, who originally published Edgar Allan Poe.
Mm.
This book is called The Art of Changing Course, and it is an incredible pickup for anyone who needs to manage both external and internal change, really deep into not only psychology and philosophy of change and getting unstuck, but specific frameworks to change the course of your life for any different way, whether that's midlife or career or personal. I truly love helping people make decisions that they thought were never possible and rewiring their brain through linguistic changes and habit forming patterns that deliver more quality of life. So that'll be coming out. That'll be everywhere on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. All my socials are just at Chris Ruden, whether it's Instagram, on LinkedIn, I talk a lot about speaking, storytelling, and disability inclusion. And then YouTube, I have 29,000 followers on there. I don't post as much as of late, but lots of videos from the past on lifting to that video we talked about taking the glove off. I'm always available. Feel free to reach out and just have a conversation.
You have completely uplifted my soul today.
I
And
appreciate that, man. I really appreciate that.
it's awesome. Yeah. So look forward to a friendship following
Yes, sir.
you. Let's circle back on this at some point. especially once after your book launches.
That'd be great.
Any way that we can help you out and just spread your message of love and hope, inspiration. We are on your train now, so you just let us know what we can do. But I appreciate you, man. And thanks for being on. I'm going in. Appreciate it.
Man, this has been a great experience. Great questions, and I appreciate the opportunity to just share and hope that someone got something from it.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you, Chris.